Steam Frame, I would say, represents a fundamental shift in the way that we look at VR. Rather than being a PC VR accessory to play your PC VR games, we see it just as a new way to play your entire Steam library.
And so we've introduced a new technology with this device called FEX, and it's now part of the Proton umbrella. And what FEX allows you to do is continue to run your x86 PC catalog on ARM.
The Steam Frame is Valve's newly announced VR headset. PC Gamer was amongst the first to be invited to try it out at Valve's Washington headquarters, so we sent Jacob Ridley and Tim Clark to get hands-on and speak to the engineers putting it together. Here's what they learned about this exciting new headset, the technology going under the hood, and why it's definitely not the Index 2.
So yeah, Steam Frame is our next generation VR headset. Before we can really talk about Steam Frame, we kind of have to talk about the Valve Index, our previous headset. So when we shipped the Valve Index, however many years ago, 6 years ago, wow. We're really happy with Valve Index. We think it's a great product, and we're really glad we were able to bring all of those features to people who are very interested in high fidelity PC VR. When we shipped it, we learned a lot of stuff. We learned from our customers what they love. We learned what they wish they could see. And we also learned as gamers ourselves what we wish we could see out of a VR headset. So with these learnings, in addition to all of the learnings we got from shipping Steam Deck and its success, all of that led to a bunch of the product decisions. It really drove a lot of the product decisions that led to Steam Frame. Steam Frame, I would say, represents a fundamental shift in the way that we look at VR. Rather than being a PC VR accessory to play your PC VR games, we see it just as a new way to play your entire Steam library, whether it's VR or non-VR titles. So with this overarching kind of high-level goal and positioning, really drove a lot of the features. So starting at a high level, we really made the headset as light and comfortable as possible. We made it wireless. We tried to not have any external devices or setup and make it as little friction to just put on the headset and start playing games. We updated the controllers so that they could handle both VR and non-VR games with a split gamepad design. And that allows you to go switch seamlessly from a VR title to a non-VR title without having to change controllers or even think about like what thing I want to play when I get into VR. The other thing we worked on a lot is the streaming technology. So we see Steam Frame as a streaming first headset. It's great for streaming, and we did a bunch of work on the hardware and software standpoint to make it a really great experience, and even inventing a lot of new technology, and you'll hear a lot more about that later. And we also know you're not always going to be next to a PC or a laptop to stream from, so we made Steam Frame a PC by itself. It's running an ARM chip, it's actually running SteamOS on device, and this gives it a lot of capabilities to play a lot of your Steam library when you're just out and about or not near your PC.
First and foremost, this is a computer. Think about the Valve Index, but it always was sort of a companion to the PC. This is not. This is a computer. We've created this with a modular architecture. So I'll show you how this comes apart. But there's 3 clasps that connect the 2 pieces, but this is the entire computer. So this is the processor, 4nm Snapdragon ARM processor, very performant. This is the lenses, the optics, the tracking system, the cameras. I'll take you through it all in a moment. And then the strap on the rear. So there's integrated audio as well as the battery on the rear. And that type of design, you'll notice it's very lightweight.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. It's surprising.
Yeah, it's under 190 grams. We put an enormous amount of effort into making that as lightweight as possible. The rear is balanced as well. So because we've split the weight between the front and the rear, and because this sits so close to your face, it's one of the most comfortable VR headsets we've ever used, and we're very proud of that. The other interesting thing about the modular architecture is we know there's a lot of strong opinions and diversity about where people want the battery, for example, what type of audio they want. There's just a lot of perspectives on that, and we agree, which is why we're not announcing anything today, but you could imagine that the same headset with this type of core module, you could have alternative versions of the head strap that could offer different features to different groups of people. There's tracking systems that use both the cameras. We have 4 cameras on the exterior to do the computer vision tracking, but there's also an IMU that detects the motion. When you do essentially loud, high-fidelity audio that includes bass, for example, it can cause certain vibrations. And so this is a new speaker system where there's 2 drivers per side that move in opposite directions. And that allows us to have audio we're very proud of that's sort of seamlessly integrated, but at the same time doesn't compromise the tracking. In the same way, this is a modular design. I will note that on the front, there's an expansion port. I didn't mention it, but this has 4 monochrome cameras, and those monochrome cameras are exceptionally well geared towards tracking in your environment. They're also very good at low light. Along those same lines, one of the things I loved about Lighthouse was that you could actually track in the dark with the lights off. Along the same vein, there are IR illuminators behind the space plate. So this can track in complete darkness, and you can even use the pass-through in complete darkness, and you sort of get a night vision view. But we know that that type of pass-through camera solution is not serving all customers. So once again, nothing to announce at this time, but we have an expansion port that allows for high-speed camera information as well as for data. So we have the 4 cameras on the exterior. We also have 2 on the interior, and those are used for eye tracking. Eye tracking is amazing for social applications, but it's also really, really compelling, and it sort of is the basis of what we're doing with our streaming technology. So we'll come back to that in a moment. But just know that I consider those eye tracking cameras as sort of fundamental to our streaming. We have pancake optics, so they're very compact. They have a folded light path, which means they're very shallow. In addition, it's very lightweight because of that. Optically, they offer edge-to-edge sharpness across the full field of view. We have LCD panels. They're 2160 by 2160 per eye, and they support a variety of refresh rates, just like the Index, where we support 72 to 120 hertz, and then we also support 144 hertz. I mentioned that it's an ARM computer, but it's also running SteamOS. So along with SteamOS, it has all of the functionality you'd expect. One of the things we're particularly excited about is the power button, where we support the same fast suspend and resume that people get from the Steam Deck and from the new Steam machine. The way we use it is you just press the button and you're in VR very quickly. You can just start playing your games, and that's a really great experience.
So what was the thinking behind the ARM processor then?
One is that just by the nature of this being on your face, we very much care about keeping it quiet. We very much care about making it cool. There's a lot of processors that allow us to do that. The ability to have so many cameras, right? We have 6 cameras on this, and the available ARM processors are very elegantly support those types of inputs.
Because they have that basis in VR headsets anyway, right?
Yeah, one of the superpowers of SteamOS is that it decouples the games you're playing from the hardware you're running it on. And so we've introduced a new technology with this device called FEX, and it's now part of the Proton umbrella. And what FEX allows you to do is continue to run your x86 PC catalog on ARM. So without that technology, ARM would have been much less of an interesting choice because we very much want you to bring your catalog with you to this device. But now that we have that and you'll get a chance to experience the performance, you don't really have to think about that.
So how wide is the compatibility for ARM games on, x86 games on ARM and through that?
It's something we're still working on.
Yeah.
We're not promising a specific number, largely because it keeps getting better. So when we set out and we kicked off and worked on this processor, we had sort of a target for these are the types of games you'd run. We've already exceeded that by quite a bit.
You can think about compatibility in the same way that when Steam Deck was first announced and we had Proton, it started out with a certain amount of games. And then with every passing week, we just added more and more compatibility, added the ability for more and more games to just work out of the box. So we're actually already at the point now where we're trying games and just seeing if they run. And a lot of times they run. Very pleasantly surprising how well it's going already.
This has 16 gigabytes of RAM. So if that itself can be an indicator for the types of games you'd expect to be able to run on this device. There's a SD card slot. So you can take your catalog from your Steam Deck or from your Steam machine, and they're fully interoperable. So you can plug it in here and just bring it along.
We don't really want to expect developers to have to do a bunch of porting work. So a lot of the work that we're doing on the software front is making a bunch of decisions and features so that games will just work. So you don't have to worry when you're making your game whether it'll run on Linux or on ARM. You just make your game for PC, and then we will do all the work to make sure that it'll run on Steam Deck, on Steam Machine, and Steam Frame. So that's our goal. While everything does work really well together in a nice family ecosystem and interoperability between devices, we are still very committed to an open PC ecosystem, and we do want everything to work equally well with whatever other devices, apps, and operating systems that you choose to use. So Steam Frame and Steam Machine are your own devices, and you can install your own operating systems and your own applications if you want to. You can use third-party controllers with Steam Machine. You can use Steam Controller with anything that runs Steam. So it really isn't the Steam family ecosystem. It's just expanding the Steam and OpenPC ecosystem.
We're really trying to blur the lines from your catalog, where you just think about it as you have your games. This is another device that lets you enjoy them. So I don't want to put too many sort of preconceived expectations on how people will use this.
We made the Steam frame to be able to play VR games and non-VR games, as we've been talking about. So one of the big problems that we knew we wanted to solve was how to control that whole variety of content out of the box. And of course, if you're playing non-VR games, you can use the Steam controller, you can bring your own controller through Bluetooth connection or USB, but we really thought it would be important to have that full capability in the box by default. So that's what we designed these controllers to do. First, how they act as VR controllers, because that's very important. These will work with all of your VR games on Steam. They're fully positionally tracked by the 4 high FOV cameras in the headset. Each one of these actually has 18 infrared LEDs throughout the controller on the top and in the handle, kind of everywhere that the headset might be able to see it. There's an IMU in each controller, which is critical for good tracking. These have capacitive inputs underneath all of the input surfaces, including triggers, the face buttons, sticks, the grip trigger, and in the handle, which means we can still do 5-finger capacitive finger tracking in a similar way that the Index did. And as far as the input mapping, they'll, out of the box, map to games that are VR games on Steam. So the compatibility is excellent. A lot of the differences come in with how they're used as non-VR controllers. Visually it's pretty obvious. This looks like a traditional gamepad design split in 2. You've got a D-pad on the left hand, which is a mirror of the 4-button Diamond ABXY over on the right side, but good for playing certain non-VR games. We have dual stage triggers and grips, a bumper button, which is pretty important on the back here. These have the same next-gen magnetic thumbsticks that you saw on the Steam controller for that high reliability and good dead zone performance. And these are each powered by a replaceable AA battery. So they do a lot of things, but we think that all comes together quite nicely to make this something that will play all your games. And like Jeremy said, you can kind of just put it on, use the controllers to navigate the menu, pick what you want to play, and you've got something sufficient to do whatever you want to do in the headset.
It's quite a departure from, again, I know we're just saying it's not an Index 2, but it is such a departure from the kind of, I guess, that idea of the finger tracking that you had on the Index controller. It's
been a journey to get from there to here, but we wanted to retain some of those features that we learned were really important with the Index controllers, like the capacitive finger sensing. We also, not in this room, but later you'll get a chance to see an optional accessory kit, which includes hand straps for the controllers for people who are used to that Index style experience where you can kind of open your hands and relax in VR. So we wanted to retain a lot of those features, but also to hit some of the other things that are critical for VR, like having a dedicated grip input button for grabbing things really reliably. And then the dual stage button, because it's useful for essentially a back button for non-VR games as kind of an auxiliary button.
In many ways, it's more similar shape to quite a lot of other, I guess, VR controllers now on the market. So I guess you're kind of getting, maybe there's like a general vibe that this is kind of the shape and the feel that you want to go for.
Yeah, the idea is that this should be fairly familiar, whether you're using it for VR or whether you're using it sort of as a gamepad. And when you're playing on the virtual screen in the headset, you'll see later that the controllers are represented in VR, so you can look and see where all the inputs are and just kind of treat it like a gamepad.
We think of this as a streaming first device. We would expect most customers to have a PC or laptop and then to stream that content from that to the Steam frame. So I just want to be clear when we're talking about streaming, we're not talking about streaming from the cloud, which would be data centers nearby to where you live. We're not even talking about streaming from your PC over your Wi-Fi and then to this device. What we're talking about is we've included, to make the experience good, every Steam frame kit comes with a dedicated wireless adapter. And this is a device you plug into your PC or your laptop, and you have a direct data connection between the Steam frame headset and your computer or laptop. It's a USB 3 device. It transmits over 6 gigahertz, which is a new part of the spectrum over Wi-Fi 6E that has a lot of channels and is very, very good for reliability as well as data transmission rates. And what this means is that we have a very high-speed dedicated link that doesn't have to bounce around directly between your PC and the headset. And that's one of the tricks we have that allows the streaming experience to be really good. The second one would be that we have, similar to the Steam Machine actually, we have 2 radios and 2 antennas built into this device. And what the radio technology does is it allows this device to communicate with the wireless adapter on the 6 gigahertz spectrum, while simultaneously maintaining a Wi-Fi connection to your normal traditional router over 5 gigahertz. So you can imagine a lot of games or multiplayer games where they're sending data back and forth, or you want to download software. Basically, this allows the headset to do all of that simultaneously while still sending video over uninterrupted. So essentially, we have those dual streams of information, which once again guarantees a quality that you'd expect. I think finally, the last bit of information, which I alluded to earlier, is that this has very low latency eye tracking built into every device inside the eye tubes. There's 2 cameras there. And so we have a new technology we've paired with that eye tracking. A lot of people might have heard of foveated rendering. That's where you use the direction you're looking at to optimize what the device is doing. So it only has to do a lot of work in that area. We are doing something similar to that, dedicated to the streaming process. So we call it foveated streaming. And what that means is we can send a very, very high fidelity representation of the source data for where you're looking, and then spend far fewer bits on the surrounding area. So you could imagine that if that foveated area, say, represents 10% of the full field of view, it would actually be a 10x multiplication factor in bandwidth, in latency, in robustness. This is happening continuously behind the scenes. And most critically, the software developer, the partners who ship on Steam, don't have to do any work to take advantage of that. Any single PC VR title you launch where you're streaming, or even non-PC VR titles, non-VR content, the entire streaming session uses that technology. So it's an over 10x enhancement to the effective bandwidth and link quality.
So what do you think of the Steam Frame? We know it's coming out next year, but we don't know how much it will cost. But even so, is it something that you're interested in? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and for more PC gaming hardware videos, click subscribe.